The wind howled across the ridge like a living thing, tearing at Aria Calloway's hood and rattling the thin metal of her rifle. Frost crept along her gloves, numbing her fingers, while a radio hissed with broken static that came and went like a dying breath. She was alone up here. No voices, no reassurance, just the Arctic dark and the weight of 8 lives moving below her. Hours earlier, it had been different. Warmer, louder. Someone had laughed when she walked into the briefing room. Not cruelly worse than that. Casually. "Who's the kid?" a voice had muttered. Another had leaned back in his chair and said, "She's our overwatch." Captain Ronan Hale hadn't even looked up from the map. Just a short nod, no words, no welcome. Now, none of that mattered. The valley below her pulsed with shadowed movement, wrong in its rhythm, too organized to be random. Her breath fogged inside her mask as she pressed her eye to the scope, heart steady, hands calm. Then, through the screaming wind and the dead radio, one shot split the night, and everything changed. Aria Calloway arrived at Forward Outpost Kestrel just before dawn. When the sky was still undecided between night and morning, the wind pushed against her like it wanted her gone, biting through layers of cold weather gear, sneaking into every seam. She stepped off the transport without ceremony, her rucksack perfectly centered on her back, her rifle case balanced in one gloved hand. She was smaller than most of the others, not fragile, just compact, tightly put together, like something designed for precision rather than presence. Her dark hair was pulled into a regulation bun beneath her hood, not a strand out of place. Her face was young, but not soft. There was a stillness in her eyes that didn't ask to be noticed. No one greeted her. A few soldiers glanced up as she passed, their gazes sliding over her and away again. Not hostile, not curious, just dismissive. She caught fragments of voices as she moved down the narrow corridor toward the armory. "That's her. Looks like she got lost. Overwatch." None of them said it to her face. They didn't need to. Aria found her assigned bunk, stowed her gear with practiced efficiency, and went straight to the armory. She moved quietly, not out of fear, but out of habit. Every motion had a reason. Every step was deliberate. She began laying out her equipment on the metal table, piece by piece, like a ritual. Rifle, optic, bipod, databook, kestrel, range cards. Each item was cleaned, checked, and aligned with precise spacing. She worked in silence, her gloved fingers steady despite the cold. Cold like this kills faster than bullets. The voice came from behind her. She didn't jump. Staff Sergeant Cole Mercer stood a few feet back, arms crossed, eyes sharp and unseeing. He was the kind of man whose reputation arrived before he did. Senior sniper, the standard, the one people whispered about when they thought they were alone. Aria turned slowly to face him. "Yes, Sergeant." He stepped closer, eyes dropping to her setup. He didn't touch anything, just observed. "What's your cold bore shift at -30? he asked. 3 Ms high 0.1 left, she replied instantly. He raised an eyebrow. And density altitude compensated in my dope card. "And your trigger freeze protocol?" "I don't let it," she said. "I breathe through it." For the first time, Mercer studied her face. Not her rank, not her size, her eyes. "First real deployment?" he asked. "Yes, Sergeant." His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "If you lock up out there, people die." "I know." "Not if, when, I know," she repeated. He nodded once, then turned and walked away without another word. It wasn't approval. But it wasn't dismissal either. The briefing room was crowded when Aria entered. Voices echoed against metal walls. Coffee steamed. Maps glowed on screens. She took a seat near the back, hands folded in her lap. Captain Ronan Hale stood at the front, pointing at terrain overlays. Tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of presence that filled space without effort. "This valley is the choke point," he said. "Our target is here. We go in quiet, fast, and we don't linger." Lieutenant Noah Reading cleared his throat. "Overwatch is one shooter." Hale nodded. Reading frowned. "That ridge is brutal. Weather alone." "She'll handle it," Hale said. Reading glanced at Aria for the first time. really looked. His hesitation wasn't cruel. It was cautious, protective. "With respect, sir," he said, "she's new." Hale's jaw tightened. He looked back at the map. "This isn't a training run. There will be no babysitting." His words weren't directed at her, but they landed on her all the same. Aria didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't defend herself. She didn't need to. Later, alone in her bunk, she removed her gloves and rubbed warmth back into her hands. From the small inner pocket of her jacket, she pulled out 2 worn dog tags. Her father's. She held them in her palm, feeling their familiar weight. He had taught her to shoot when she was barely tall enough to rest the rifle on a bench. He never praised her, never raised his voice. He corrected her breathing, her posture, her patience. "Don't chase the shot," he used to say. "Let it come to you." He died when she was 16. After that, she trained harder than anyone else, not to prove anything, to be worthy. She hadn't chosen this path because it was heroic. She had chosen it because it was honest, because here, competence mattered more than charisma, because responsibility meant something out there. People lived or died based on whether you did your job. That made sense to her. That night, as she zipped up her cold weather layers and checked her rifle one last time, she felt the weight of what was coming. Not fear, awareness. She was ready, even if no one else believed it yet. The helicopter cut through the night like a blade, its rotors chewing at the wind, scattering snow in violent spirals that vanished as quickly as they formed. Aria sat near the open door, knees braced, gloved hands resting lightly on her rifle case. The red interior light painted every face in muted shadows. No one spoke. They didn't need to. Captain Hale stood, clipped into the overhead line, scanning the dark valley below. Lieutenant Reading checked his tablet, the glow reflecting in his eyes. Staff Sergeant Mercer sat across from Aria, arms folded, gaze unreadable. When the ramp dropped, the cold rushed in like a living thing. They moved fast, disciplined, silent. Boots met snow. Shapes scattered into the dark. Aria peeled off immediately, heading uphill. Her steps careful, calculated. The ridge rose ahead of her like a frozen spine, jagged and unforgiving. The climb was steep, and the wind pushed hard enough to not balance from a careless foot. She didn't rush. She counted her breaths, measured her footing, let her muscles settle into rhythm. By the time she reached her position, the rest of the team had already begun moving into the valley. She set up without hesitation. Bipod anchored, optic cleared, data card taped to her forearm. She settled behind the scope and let the world narrow. Below her, the valley unfolded in gray and shadow. Rock outcroppings, ice-choked streams, sparse clusters of low structures clinging to the terrain like afterthoughts. At first it looked quiet. Then she saw the first movement. Not fast, not sloppy, deliberate. A group of figures shifted behind a ridge line, spacing exact. Another appeared near a rock shelf, matching pace. They weren't wandering. They were positioning. Aria zoomed in, heart steady. Then she saw more. Too many. Her fingers hovered over the radio. Overwatch to ground. "I'm seeing multiple heat signatures. Patterned movement. Spacing suggests trained elements." Static answered first, then Hale's voice. "Define patterned, not random patrols," she said. "They're setting lanes, overlapping fields." There was a pause. "How certain are you?" Reading asked. Aria watched a figure signal with 2 fingers, then disappear behind a boulder. "I'm certain," Mercer's voice cut in. "Describe formation." She did quietly. "Precisely." Another pause. Hale exhaled slowly. "We don't have satellite confirmation." "I know." A crackle passed through the radio, then a tone. "Solar interference spiking," Reading said. "We're losing clarity." The sky above Aria shifted faintly like something unseen was bending. She kept watching. Another group emerged, moving in synchronized arcs. "They're not reacting," she said. "They're waiting for them." Hale's jaw tightened. "Command, advise," he said. Static answered. Reading tapped his screen. "Signal degradation is accelerating." Aria's stomach tightened. This was the moment. Abort or proceed. What would you do? A voice whispered inside her. If it were you down there. She didn't move, didn't blink. They've built a net, she said. If we move straight in, they'll close it. Another pause. Wind screamed over her position, shaking her scope just enough that she had to compensate. Hale made his decision. We adjust route, he said. Slower approach. Aria, you guide us. Her throat tightened. Understood. The radio crackled again. Then silence stretched longer than it should have. Aria adjusted her optic, scanning, counting. Then the radio hissed. Then it went dead. She stared at it. Tapped it. Nothing. She checked her secondary. Nothing. Her breath fogged harder inside her mask. Overwatch report. Hale's voice tried to break through, then vanished. Aria swallowed. Below her, the team moved, unaware. Still walking into the net, her fingers tightened around the rifle. What would you do in this moment? Would you panic? Would you freeze? Would you assume someone else would fix it? The enemy movement intensified. They were converging, closing lanes, cutting off escape. This wasn't coincidence. It was preparation. Aria scanned faster now, tracking every shadow, every heat signature, building a living map in her mind. She spotted the command element. He stood slightly apart, issuing signals. Coordinating, she measured the distance. It was extreme, well beyond comfortable. Wind gusted sideways, then calmed, then surged again. No spotter, no confirmation, no backup, just her and 8 lives below. Her heart didn't race. It slowed. Every sound sharpened. Her father's voice echoed in memory. Don't chase the shot. Let it come to you. She waited. Wind shifted. She adjusted. Waited. The commander turned. She exhaled and pulled the trigger. The recoil was gentle. The silence afterward was not. The figure dropped below. Everything broke. Shouting, scattering, confusion. They didn't know where it came from. Aria didn't wait. She adjusted and fired again. Then again, she removed leadership, weapon carriers, coordinators below. The ambush collapsed into chaos. Her radio crackled weakly, then died again. They were alive. She knew that much. But now the enemy was searching for her. And the wind screamed louder. What would you have done? Would you have stayed or would you have run? Aria stayed because that was the job. Aria did not move after the last echo of gunfire faded. She didn't lift her head. She didn't rush to check the valley. She stayed exactly where she was, cheek pressed lightly into the stock, eyes steady behind the scope, breathing slow and deliberate. The cold noted at her fingers, but she didn't flex them. Any unnecessary movement would cost heat. Any wasted motion would cost focus. She reached for her data book, flipping it open with one thumb. Wind shifting from northwest to cross slope. Velocity inconsistent pulsing. Temperature drop accelerating. Humidity rising. She logged everything. Not because she had time. Because she always did. Her pencil scratched quietly, each line precise. She didn't write in words, just numbers, angles, notes only she could read. To anyone else, it would have looked obsessive, excessive. But this was how she kept the world from becoming noise. Below her, the valley was no longer quiet. Heat signatures scattered. Shapes broke formation. The once organized lanes twisted into disorder. Some figures crouched. Others ran. A few dropped flat against the ice, unsure of what had just happened or where it had come from. Aria noticed something else. They weren't retreating. They were searching. She adjusted her magnification by instinct. Fingers moving without conscious thought. She tracked small changes. A head tilt. A pause that lasted half a second longer than it should. A hand gesture that wasn't panic but communication. They were trying to find the shooter. Her. She slid her focus across the terrain, mapping lines of sight, noting ridge lines that offered cover, shadows that moved against the wind rather than with it. She could tell which shapes were natural and which were wrong. She always could. Back in training, instructors used to accuse her of guessing. She wasn't. She was listening. The mountain spoke in patterns, and she had learned its language. Her father had taken her out into snowstorms when she was still young. Had made her sit and watch how drifts formed behind trees, how wind bent tall grass, how sound traveled differently through cold air. Cold hides mistakes, he told her. But it always reveals discipline. She had remembered that Mercer's voice echoed faintly in her head. Now cold like this kills faster than bullets. She flexed her toes inside her boots, keeping blood flowing. She adjusted her position, shifting her weight by centimeters, not inches. Her body was beginning to stiffen, but she didn't let it show. Down below, two figures broke off from a main group and moved uphill, not random. They were sweeping. Her gaze followed them, not through the scope, but with her naked eye first. She didn't want to commit to a target prematurely. She wanted to understand intent. She checked her wind flag, a thin strip of fabric she placed earlier. It fluttered, then stilled. She noted the pattern, waited. Then she made a tiny adjustment to her dope. Not because she was going to fire, because she might. Her radio crackled faintly. Not words, just interference. She didn't answer. If they were hunting, any signal would betray her. Her breathing slowed even more. The cold burned her lungs now, but she didn't cough. She had trained herself not to. She thought about the first time she'd learned to shoot in snow. How her instructors had mocked her carefulness. "You planning a wedding out there?" someone had joked as she logged her environment. That same instructor later failed the cold weather qualifier. Aria had passed. She saw a faint flicker behind a rock shelf. Not heat. Reflection, metal. She zoomed slightly. A weapon barrel. She noted the angle. Calculated. Stored. She didn't fire. Not yet. Mystery kept people cautious. Certainty made them reckless. She watched how they moved. How they communicated without words. Who gave signals? Who waited? Who deferred? Leadership always revealed itself. She had just proven that. Now she needed to survive it. Her fingers tingled painfully. She rolled her shoulders one at a time, slow and controlled, redistributing tension without creating silhouette movement. Down below, the chaos intensified. Some were yelling, others were trying to restore order, but it wasn't working because they didn't know what they were fighting. Aria felt her heart beating, but it wasn't fast. It was deliberate. She had always been like this, under pressure, not numb. Focused. Her father used to say she didn't react. She processed. She remembered standing in the snow beside him, watching him aim without firing, just breathing. "You don't rush a moment like this," he'd said. "You let it tell you what it is." The mountain was telling her now. It was about to become dangerous. Very dangerous. And she was still alone but not unprepared, not panicked, not uncertain. She had seen this before, not here, not like this, but in fragments, in drills, in frozen mornings when others quit early, in long nights where discipline outlasted comfort. She wasn't a mystery to herself. She was just invisible to everyone else for now. And that she realized might be the only advantage she had left. The radio died without warning. Not a crackle, not a warning tone, just silence. Aria tapped the side of the unit with her knuckle, then checked the cable, then the backup clip to her vest. She adjusted the antenna, angled it slightly, switched channels, then switched again. She cycled through every frequency she had memorized, every fallback protocol she'd been taught. Nothing. The mountain swallowed her signal like it had never existed. Her eyes lifted immediately to the valley. The team was still moving. 8 dark shapes cutting through the snow, cautious but steady, unaware that the net had already begun to close around them. Her chest tightened. She raised the radio again. "Ground. This is Overwatch. Do you copy?" Silence. She switched again and again and again. Nothing. She felt the cold press deeper into her bones, but it wasn't the temperature that made her hands feel heavier. It was the realization settling into her muscles, into her breathing. They couldn't hear her, and they were walking straight into it. Aria scanned faster now, building a living picture of the battlefield in her mind. The formations she had seen earlier were no longer theoretical. They were real. They were moving. Enemy elements were sliding into place like pieces on the board. She saw it clearly now. Blocking units behind rock shelves. Suppression lanes angled toward the valley floor. Heavy weapons positioned not to fire yet, but to seal exits. They weren't trying to stop the team. They were trying to catch him. Her fingers tightened around the radio. She forced herself to stop cycling channels. Panic would waste time. Time was something they didn't have. She tracked the team through her scope, watching as one of them paused briefly, scanning, then resumed movement. They were alert. But alert didn't matter. When the trap was patient, her gaze shifted again, wider, slower. Then she saw him. He stood slightly apart from the others, elevated on a rock shelf. He wasn't carrying a heavy weapon. He wasn't moving much at all. He didn't need to. He was giving signals. Not with exaggerated gestures. With subtle ones, a finger, a nod, a tilt of the head. Everything responded to him. Aria's breathing slowed. That was command. She measured the distance automatically. Her stomach tightened. It was extreme, beyond comfortable, beyond standard, beyond what most people would even consider. Wind cut across the slope, violent and inconsistent, shoving at her rifle, howling loud enough to blur sound. No spotter, no corrections, no one to confirm, just her and 8 people who trusted a voice they could no longer hear. Her heart didn't race. It steadied. She pressed her cheek harder into the stock, letting the rifle become part of her. She pulled her data card closer, eyes flicking across the numbers angle, density, temperature, spin, drift, wind. She watched the flag she had placed earlier. One flicked, another stilled, then reversed. She closed her eyes for half a second, listened. The mountain always spoke. You just had to let it. Her father's voice surfaced in her memory. Don't chase the shot. Let it come to you. She waited. The commander lifted his hand. She adjusted. Waited. Wind surged. She held. Waited. Then just for a breath, everything settled. She exhaled and squeezed. The recoil was gentle. The silence afterward was not. The figure dropped. Not staggered. Not stumbled. Dropped below. Everything exploded into confusion shouts, scattering movement, signals that no longer meant anything. They didn't know what had just happened. They didn't know where it came from. Aria didn't let herself watch. She was already adjusting. Another leader had stepped forward. She measured, waited, fired. That one fell, too. Below, formations began to fracture. People ran in conflicting directions. Someone dropped prone.